Hello, Brandon Stark. I've been expecting you.
Welcome back, Night's Watchmen, to the first ever audio podcast from the Cast in the Darkness. As most of you are probably aware, we've been doing videos for about a month and a half now, and they've been going pretty well, so we figured we'd branch out and do the thing we were planning on doing in the first place.
Yeah, we do the second thing first.
That's right. So I think we're going to start off by introducing the hosts. I'm Matt.
I'm Clay.
All right, and that was awesome. We just introduced the hosts.
Yeah.
We aren't the only people that are going to be involved in the podcast. We have a couple friends that have said that they want to be involved in it, but they're not going to be in this first episode simply because I want, this episode just to be sort of like a framing episode to, kind of get into the groove of the whole thing. New microphone, new setup. Still don't have a new video camera yet, but that's coming. So how about we talk about how we first found Game of Thrones and kind of like what drew us to the book series, because it started out as a book series. Mm-hmm. Most of you might not be aware of that.
Oh, yeah, actually, quite a few might be.
So I'm going to start with myself. I actually got a first edition hardcover copy of Storm of Swords when it first came out. And I started reading that. Hey, don't look at me awkwardly with three fingers in the air.
Yeah.
This is an audio podcast, sure. Yeah, okay. So I started on book 3, and I did not enjoy it at all. It was one of the worst books I've ever read. Let's be clear about something. I'm like, who the fuck is this Rob character? And why is he leading an army at 14 years old? And, he's dead. Well, I'm glad I didn't invest in this piece of crap character.
Oh, God. Well done. Slow clap. Whatever.
Yeah. Well, so I got about 2/3 of the way through the book. I got to the Red Wedding, and then I realized that the book that I had purchased was a damaged copy. And there was a chapter in the middle that was missing.
Oh, really?
It was the chapter with the purple wedding.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm reading through this book, and then it suddenly really awkwardly skips from, Sansa being a whiny bitchy teenager to everybody freaking the fuck out about this thing that I have no idea what happened. And Cersei's all crying, and Tyrion's in a prison cell, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on. So I go back to our local bookstore, and I find the first book, so I get a paperback copy of that, and I read it, and it was good. Unfortunately for me, the first book is all about the Starks.
Mm-hmm. And they're all dead.
And I know that they all die. So I really have a hard time investing in these characters that are the embodiment of the series up to the end of the first book.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a really conflicted introduction to this series, and so I finish book 3, I go all the way through, and I finish book 3, and I find a copy that doesn't have the purple wedding cut out of it, and then there's nothing else, because
at that point,
Feast for Crows doesn't come out until 10 years later.
Yeah.
So I put the books away, and I completely forget about this series until Feast for Crows comes out. And I buy Feast for Crows. I have a first edition hardcover Feast for Crows on my bookshelf, but I don't read it because I don't remember anything that happened in this series of books. And I'm like, well, it's not really worth it to me to reread these books that I don't like just to read another book. So I purchased this book for no reason. Just to have it sit beside other books on my shelf. Then I eventually lend out my copies of the first 3 books, and then they just disappear from my shelf. So I just have this one book, this book 4, red, hardbound edition, sitting on my shelf with nothing around it that's related remotely to Game of Thrones. And then 4 years later, Dance with Dragons comes out. And I'm like, oh, well, I'll buy this one, because by then Twitter's happened and Facebook has happened, and there's all this, like, drama about Dance with Dragons, and, like, the hype, and the Twitteriness, and the Facebookiness, and all the things. Mm-hmm. And so everybody's like, oh my god, this book is so good, rah, rah, rah. That's my internet
That's
voice.
Your internet voice, by the way. Yeah, nice.
And so I'm like, oh, well, I'll pick up Dance with Dragons, and maybe I'll read Feast for Crows. So I start Feast for Crows. I have no idea what the fuck's going on. Because it's been 15 years, pretty much, since I read the first books. So I read through all 5 of them, and it kind of, like, I got it.
Finally?
I got it. I figured out what it was about, why it was good, and it was good. It was good. And then the TV show had started, and I was like, kind of into the TV show, and it was good.
How... Everyone in their right mind asking, how the fuck do you go back to it? How do you know? I'm going to continue to buy books about a series I don't care about. What? How? Your decision-making process is hilarious.
My decision-making process is always flawless. You ask my girlfriend. I never make a bad choice. She and I have this running joke over the past year or so that every time I make a decision, it ends in tragedy.
Please don't tell this was your decision.
Oh, right. That's true. I made a choice to start a podcast one day. And I was like, hey, Clay, you want to be on my podcast? And he was like, yeah, sure. And I was like, okay, I'm going to start a blog, and then we'll eventually start a podcast. This is probably going to end in tragedy. I can foresee many members of our families dying tragically at a wedding. All right, you go, sir.
Wow, okay. So I have nothing in anywhere near remote to,
You don't have something that rivals my epic tale?
Your epic tale of just complete destruction of how the series is going to be read. So unlike Matt, I started reading it, you said you started reading like about 14. I didn't get it until,
I actually have no idea. While you're talking, I'm going to internet.
You're going to internet, alright. I started reading it when I was, actually about the same age. Yeah, I would have been, high school. Yeah, it was making the way around through my high school. First year of high school.
It was published in 2000, so the version I had, I would have got it when I was 17. So I would have read it when I was 17, so you would have been 15.
Yes.
14.
I got it first year of high school.
Yeah.
So grade 9.
Okay, so you would have read it at, 14 then.
Yeah, I would have. I did read it at 14. I thought I was older when I read it, but whatever. Anyways. So I started reading it. It made the rounds through the school. Everyone was talking about it and all excited. So, all of my friends group was reading it at the same time, so I picked it up and I started reading it. And unlike Matt, I enjoyed the start characters because I didn't know they all died. So I got really invested in these characters. And then the bastard killed them all off and I threw the books out the window.
You didn't do that at the end of book 1 when Joffrey's like, Sir Lin Payne, bring me that man's head.
Yeah, that...
sorry, he was a little kid. Sorry, it's Sir Lin Payne, bring me that man's head.
No, actually, not. I didn't do that till the scene after the Red Wedding in Storm of Swords, when...
They throw the body in the river?
They throw the body in the river. Oh, and Aya gets hit in the back of the head, and she goes black.
Oh,
and I thought everyone was dead, including Aya.
Yeah,
and I was just like, fuck, this is dumb.
Yeah,
and I just threw this all out. And I'm done with this book series. And that was about the same time that the internet exploded with the book series, being like, this is dumb, like, everyone's dying, like, this is stupid, right?
Martin's a sadist.
Blah, blah, blah. So
I was writing murder porn.
Yes, murder porn, yeah. So I was all into that part, which is really strange considering I went back to the series when Feast of Crows came out, reread it, and read Feast of Crows. So usually like I said, I'm surprised Matt went back to the series. I wouldn't have gone back to the series, but for some reason I did. And it stuck with me. And out of all of the books, I think I've reread Game of Thrones the most. I'm pretty sure that's a lie, but whatever. I can't think of another book series that I've reread more than twice. and Game of Thrones I've read about 4 times.
I've read Game of Thrones now, at this point, 3 times. I've read the first 3 books 3 times at this point. I've read books 4 and 5. Book 4 I've read twice, and book 5 I've read once. Mm-hmm. Because book 5 I read it and then I lent it out to a friend who still hasn't gotten it back to me.
Yeah. That being said, I hated book 5, so...
I like the story in book 5. I hate the chronology. Mm-hmm. The fact that, Sam in book 4 immediately leaves to go to Old Town.
Old Town, yeah.
And then when you start reading book 5, you've already read through Sam's journey to Old Town. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then book 5 starts, and it's Jon Snow talking to Sam about going to Old Town.
Oh, yeah.
And I flipped a table. It was a metaphorical table. But in my mind, it was a big table, and it just flipped beautifully.
Mm-hmm. Just Monopoly.
I took it upon myself at that point I chose to basically forget everything that happened in Feast for Crows while I was reading Dance with Dragons, up to the point where they merge at about 2/3 of the way through. Mm-hmm. Because I felt as though it was just going to hurt me too much to go on reading stories about characters that are either dead or doing completely other things. Mm-hmm. By the time I get to them in Dance with Dragons. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So that's right too, because characters that are already dead
appear in Dance with Dragons chronologically before they die in Feast for Crows.
This is why I absolutely hated the book. It was such a mindfuck. I remember that too, because I remember reading through it and being like, I'm pretty sure this guy's dead. Yep, I'm 100% sure this guy's dead. Go back to the previous look at. Yes, he's dead. The fuck?
The only saving grace for that book to me was the fact that Martin was, let's use this slightly, smart about separating the geographies of the characters. Mm. So all the Essos characters were saved for Dance with Dragons.
Yeah, yeah.
And the northern characters were for the most part saved for Dance with Dragons. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So this means also that Feast for Crows sucks. Because all the good characters don't appear in the book.
Yeah.
No Jon Snow, no Daenerys Targaryen, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. no Tyrion Lannister.
Yep. No Quentin.
Quentin is mentioned as going to Essos.
Yeah.
But they don't actually show him, I guess. That's the only really saving grace for Feast for Crows is Dorne, I think.
Yeah.
Like, actually introducing the Martells.
Yeah, I was gonna...
Because you see Oberyn in book 3. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, we get to meet the Martells, like Ariane's plot, her conspiracy, and things like that kind of help, and there's the story in Old Town, I guess, but, I don't know, books.
As an aside, do we give a fuck about spoilers?
I do not. I am going to give a lot of spoilers, and then after them, I'm going to say spoiler alert.
I don't really care.
If you have not read the books...
This might be a problem.
This podcast will probably spoil some things for you. Like, spoiler alert, Joffrey Lannister dies a brutal death.
Yes.
Bitch gets what's coming to him.
Thank fuck.
Spoiler alert, Oberyn Martell, the Red Viper, is a tragic hero and dies pretty suddenly in the books.
Yeah.
He appears in one chapter and then dies pretty much in the next.
Yeah. Which makes me sad, because I actually
we'll get into stuff like that much later on. As this podcast progresses, we're going to be discussing the show, how it differs from the books. Mm-hmm. We're going to be going over maybe episode by episode the first 3 seasons. I don't think we'll get all that done before season 4 airs, because that's basically going to be an episode per episode, give or take. Mm-hmm. Because, they're long. We have stuff to discuss. I want to talk about how they differ from the books, chapter by chapter even. Okay. So, like, in the first episode, the intro, they changed the characters that are involved in that. Yep. So, there are specific things that I want to talk about. Okay, so we actually have an agenda. I've done show notes for this episode and everything. Mm-hmm. Okay. How we first found Game of Thrones. Did we finish your story? Yeah, you read book 3, all the characters died, you hated it.
And hated
read
it.
book 4, and then I'm assuming the same happened for book 5 as it came out and you read it.
Came out and I read it, yeah.
And then you reread the whole series when it came out.
Yeah.
Which we're all going to have to do in 2018 when Winds of Winter comes out.
Yes. Mind you, that being said...
2018, knock on wood.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyways...
Yeah.
I wanted to discuss maybe a little bit, like, what else we do in life other than... Well, for me, my life is pretty much defined by this blog, my job, and my girlfriend at this point.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably already read the blog.
Yes, and you know what Matt's about.
The blog has been particularly non-personal, however. So I work in a call center because I live in Canada.
Yep, well done.
And I have a girlfriend. We've been together for a year. We moved in together last month. She originally asked to be on the podcast. She only started watching Game of Thrones when she and I started dating. Mm-hmm. So I was like, oh, really? You're not really a big Game of Thrones fan. I mean, she likes the show, kind of. I mean, she likes the show, but she never showed any interest in reading the books or the card game or any of the other stuff. So I was surprised. I was like, oh, really? And then she's like, oh, you just don't want me on your podcast, so I don't want to be on it anymore. That probably I shouldn't make that voice.
Oh my god, you're so
quoting my girlfriend on the podcast.
I think it'd be hilarious, actually. Not really hilarious, but I think it'd be a good voice having a person that's only seen the show and not read the books.
Yeah, the internet calls them the unsullied.
So we have one of the unsullied on our podcast.
We will. She and I were talking. She's at work right now. And in a couple of weeks, when we get together to record another one, maybe even next week, we'll see. We might do it via Skype or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, we've been trying to do it via Skype for a month.
But
I didn't have a microphone that was really good and all that
I'm not out
of
the province.
That's the thing is, you're in the province right now, so we can be, face to face and you can see my expressions and fly in real time at my terrible voices, which really makes me feel good. So she's probably going to be on...
laugh track of this? That's awesome. I'm the awkward laugh track. Yes.
Okay, there's this podcast in the Magic community called the A-Team. Yeah. And it's the Canadian Magic Podcast.
Yeah.
And the host of that podcast, his name is KYT. Well, okay, his name isn't KYT. His initials are KYT. And he is... for the last 150, 100 and whatever episodes, basically been the laugh track of the A-Team. He's pretty quiet, low-key, but he laughs awkwardly at all of the jokes of the other guys on the podcast.
So then I should call myself CRF?
Maybe.
Insert laugh.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. Okay, so I work in a call center and I live with my girlfriend, and we're sitting at my dining room table recording a podcast. That's pretty much where my life is right now. How about you, sir?
I've mentioned the fact that I'm out of province. I work in construction. I'm a welder. So the past 4 months, I've been going back and forth to Newfoundland, building a plant. So that is my life right now, is literally sit at home for a few weeks, probably close to a couple of months this time, then grab a job somewhere and then go work for insane amounts of hours, make a bunch of money, and come back and piss it all away back home again.
That seems like a life, for sure.
It's
Now, when you say plant, is this a giant robotic plant that is designed to take over the rest of Canada from the perspective of Newfoundland?
Yes.
Are we talking like a piranha plant? Mecha Piranha from one of those Mario Brothers games?
No. I want it to be. That'd be awesome, actually. No, nickel processing plant in Long Harbor.
That's way more boring.
It is completely boring.
That's not fun at all.
No.
You just ruined it. Podcast over.
Done. Monopolies.
Flip table. Alright, so...
I'll say Monopoly a lot. I'm flipping the table. Just Monopoly. Everything goes fine.
Because that's what you do in Monopoly. Because it's the most frustrating and maybe rewarding game ever.
Yeah, because it's one of you gets angry enough to flip the table, and then you see pieces fly everywhere, and it's awesome. That being said, Matt has said on the videos a couple of times saying that he's come from a Magic background. I played Magic years ago and then sold my entire collection to Matt because I hated everyone else that played Magic in the city.
Me too!
And then I played Warhammer Fantasy, and now I'm playing War Machine and Hordes. So I'm a miniatures gamer that plays cards on the side.
I'm a card gamer that tries to browbeat my other friends into playing card games with me. We have Game of Thrones things to talk about. Super exciting Game of Thrones things. Game of Thrones things to
Games
talk
of Thrones?
No, that's a different podcast we do. So we have an agenda here. We're going to talk about some of our reactions to the casting news that's come out this summer. Oh! I just made Clay spit! That's the best! Winning! I just victoried the podcast. Do you need a thing?
Oh, yeah.
Alright, I'll get you some paper towel.
There you go. First spit take of the podcast.
Oh, woo! Alright.
Oh, god damn.
There you go. You have to clean up the floor, too.
Yeah.
Well played, sir.
Yep, that was hilarious.
That was really good. Woo!
At least it didn't ruin my keyboard.
At the 20-minute mark of the first podcast, the score is Matt 1, Clay 0. Okay, so, according to the show notes, the first thing we want to talk about is reactions to casting news over the previous summer. We're going to start with the recasting that's happened, because that's probably maybe the most controversial casting news that's come out this summer. It's not exactly the most controversial, because the casting of one actor in particular just destroyed the internet. But the recasting of these three characters was pretty controversial, especially one in particular. So we're going to start with the recasting of Tommen Baratheon. Originally, Tommen Baratheon was played by child British actor A. Mm-hmm. I don't know his name and I don't care. He was just a 4-year-old with blonde hair. Mm-hmm. He's been recast with the British actor Dean Charles Chapman, who originally played Martin Lannister, who was one of the squires that was captured and ultimately killed by Rickard Karstark, which led to the beheading of Karstark himself.
Yep.
And he's also been recently in the BBC show The White Queen. He's, young British actor. He's older than the old actor. They're recasting from within here, which is really interesting. So they must have really seen something that they liked in this actor for the 6 minutes he was on the show last time.
He wasn't on the show for very long. He was on it for maybe a scene when they brought the squires in, and then he was lying dead on the floor.
He was in the prison, he was in the cell when Rickard and his boys came in and grabbed them, I guess, too. So that's 3 scenes.
There are 3 scenes.
Only 2 of which was he alive in.
Yeah. Oh.
So, I don't know. They must have really seen something they liked about him. I think it's important that he's old, though.
Yeah, that's because Tommen isn't that old.
In the books, Tommen's like 4. He's about the same age as Rickon, I think. He's close to Rickon in age.
Yeah.
I think he's a little older. I think Rickon's 3 and he might be 5 or 6. Mm-hmm. But he's really young in the books. Mm-hmm. But they cast all the characters very old in the show.
Yeah.
Daenerys Targaryen is 13 in the books, and Emilia Clarke is not 13.
Well, she's like 20, but whatever.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter. She's not 13.
Yeah, well, that really awkward times in the first season of it would be... some of the scenes in the first season
would be illegal.
Would be extremely illegal if she was their actual age.
Yeah. So Tommen was actually one of the characters that I noted at the start of the series that they cast approximately as young as the book character. Mm-hmm. Like, he was just a very young actor. But I think it's important to note that Tommen is going to become a very important character. He's going to have dialogue. He's going to have kittens. He's going to have so many kittens. Mm-hmm. All the kittens. And he's going to have one very nice-looking kitten in particular. And I think that recasting him older helps with the fact that the character's going to be more important.
Yeah.
He's going to be able to hold down a heavier workload.
Yeah. And that an actual 4-year-old actor would not be able to.
And it's also going to help reduce some of the icky.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I noted in the in the show notes was if the original actor were still playing Tommen and he was going to become engaged to Natalie Dormer, that's icky.
That is extremely awkward. That being said,
luckiest 4-year-old ever?
4-year-old in the world, because oh my god, Natalie Dormer.
Oh, she's the reason why I started watching The Tudors. Let's be honest. Okay, so what do you think about Martin Lannister playing Tommen Lannister?
I agree. Less icky and jealous that he gets engaged to Natalie Dormer.
So, second up, we have the second recasting.
Yes.
Of Gregor Clegane, the Mountain That Rides. And he's going to be portrayed by Thor Bjornsson. He, most recently, placed third in the 2012 World's Strongest Man competition. This is the kind of guy that makes sense to play the Mountain That Rides.
Yes.
Ian White wasn't a great recasting. And I think that is part of the reason why he wasn't in the show for the third season. Mm-hmm. He didn't have, in the book, he doesn't really have a lot to do, mm-hmm. but he could have just been on the show.
Yeah.
There was a lot going on in King's Landing. He could have just showed up and just stood in the background looking all menacing, whatever. Mm-hmm. And he wasn't there because I think that they realized pretty quickly that he wasn't the right fit. So, getting this Bjornsson, yes. I think he's just huge.
Which is awesome.
Fun fact, Bjornsson is 20 years younger than the actor who plays his younger brother.
Yeah, that might be an issue.
I mean, they're never going to appear on the show side by side.
No.
Because...
And that being said, Fandor is pretty... You can't really tell his facial features too well.
That's right. You can't tell how old he is because of the prosthesis.
The prosthesis on his face is actually extremely good. So you're probably pretty hard to tell how old he is.
And he would theoretically be, artificially aged anyway because of the fact that his face was half burnt off. Mm-hmm, I mean, it makes sense that he would look grizzled and old and
it's not gonna matter that much anyways.
So he looks like he'll probably be more physically viable for a battle scene. Whereas the old actors, either of them really never did much action-wise. The original actor in the first season, he participated in the joust against Loras.
Yeah,
or
and
whatever.
Then freaked out and cut a horse in half.
Yeah. Which is fine, but that's not exactly one-on-one combat against a very talented and cocky Southerner who has a giant spear. Mm-hmm. Pretty tough to best the Red Viper if you can barely beat a dead horse. Mm-hmm. Alright, so third on our recasting list is the character Dario Naharis. This is the one that, I don't know. This one was a little controversial, I think. Because Ed Skrein pretty much embodied Dario. I mean, they wanted to reinvent Dario as a young, cocky, sort of Eastern militia hipster type. Mm-hmm. And I think Ed Skrein did a really good job of being the kind of guy that Dany would find attractive.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't find Jorah attractive, despite the fact that Jorah is basically her lapdog. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And this new actor, Michael Huisman, who was in Treme and Nashville, neither of which I've seen. Mm-hmm. But from the picture that I have of him, he just looks older, a little scruffier, a little less cocky.
He also is physically just straight up smaller than Ed Skrein is, which I
don't know, it might be...
have issues with.
Yeah, it's hard to say. It's really a shame that they replaced Ed Skrein at all. He was only on the show for 3 episodes.
Yeah, I think he did an awesome job in those 3 episodes.
He was only there a very short time, and I thought he did a really good job. Mm-hmm. I liked that Dario better than the Dario in the books.
Yeah, I didn't like the Dario in the books.
And from the sounds of it, Michael Huisman is going to be more book similar. When everybody who's watched season 3 is But Dario Naharis has this long blonde hair, and he has a swagger, and he really likes looking at Daenerys' tits. And it's just not the same.
No.
I don't know. This is the one that bugs me the most, certainly. The other two, I think, are both net positive. But this one, it's so out of the blue.
I don't know, maybe there's a problem with the actor.
It's possible, maybe scheduling conflicts, maybe he didn't get along well with the producing team.
Mm-hmm. That being said, that's just wild speculation. There's no...
Yeah, oh, absolutely. But maybe there was just a thing about Ed Skrein that didn't work in the terms of making the show. Hopefully they won't have to recast him again, because he's one of the most important characters in the Essos storyline.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the 3 recastings that we've had this off-season. Off-season.
Off-season?
Yeah, it's like they're filling up with free agents. So we're going to talk about a few of the bigger castings. And we're going to start with the most recent casting announcement, who is Struan Roger, from The Madness of King George, which was a pretty big film in the 90s. And he's going to be playing the character Bloodraven, who isn't supposed to be in the show this season.
Nope.
But that's okay. He is the, I guess, metaphorical three-eyed raven that Bran sees in his visions.
Yep.
He is what Jojen Reed is leading Bran towards. He's the Green Seer.
Mm-hmm.
And he is going to set Bran on his path. He is the linchpin, so to speak, of the Bran storyline.
Yeah.
They are legitimately fast-forwarding through a big part of Bran's story, so it's really tough to say what they're going to end up doing with the Bran and the Reeds. Mm-hmm. The Bran.
And the Reeds.
And the Reeds. Well, that's fast-forwarding an awful lot, but at the same time, up to the end of Dance with Dragons, Bran doesn't actually interact with anybody else. Because even in his green dreams, when he's seeing the past, he's not interacting. He's just rediscovering the truth about his family's past.
Mm-hmm.
So we can have all that stuff happening independent of everybody else's characters.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the casting is pretty good. I just find it really strange that they're casting him so quickly.
Maybe last episode you see Bran arrive, and
he comes face to face with the Green Seer.
Bloodraven, and then
maybe, yeah.
And then that's the scene. As the final scene is him and Hodor going in, and this man completely entrenched in tree root.
That's possible, yeah.
And it's like, "Hello, Bran. I am the Three-Eyed Raven." And
I've been expecting you. So we have now a pretty huge casting. Joel Fry from the recent comedy Plebes, which wasn't very good. You never saw it? It was okay. He was fine in it. The show was terrible. He's going to be playing Hizdar Zolorok.
I'm not going to try to pronounce that.
Okay. He is probably the second or third most important character in the Essos plot. You're aware of who this character is?
I think so.
He is the wealthy Marinese nobleman who promises Daenerys 90 days of peace inside of Meereen in exchange for her hand in marriage.
Oh, right. Okay.
And so when he's able to deliver on having the gangs of Meereen, like the Assassin's Guild, stop killing people for 90 days or 30 days or whatever it is, then she is required to marry him. Despite the fact that she's in love with and would much rather be with Dario Naharis, which causes her internal conflict, and it basically puts her at a standstill and destroys her whole storyline because she becomes Bella, and that sucks. Yeah. Because for the entirety of the rest of the series, she's this badass bitch who has dragons and massacres slavers and just takes out like cities widespread and just she's badass.
Yeah, just conquer all of the known world.
And she goes from being badass to being Bella.
Being a whiny teenager. Go.
And that...
God, I hated the character. I was so annoyed with the character in Book 5. I was going to kill someone.
Yeah, like she went from being probably my favorite character or second favorite character to being top 10, maybe?
Yeah.
She's...
That being said, though, and in the books, at this point, she's 16?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Probably like, maybe under 16, probably like closer to 15. Yeah.
Okay. So she's doing the whole rebellious teenager, which is really fucking annoying if you've ever had... You've grown up with sisters. You know them.
I have.
Yes, you know them at 16.
I do, yes.
Yes, exactly.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Those are the age you want to throw them off. Like, off a cliff.
Off a cliff?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, pretty much true.
So, in writing specs, well done, you've made me hate the character when she's 16. Congratulations.
Pretty much, yeah.
Congratulations. We all do this.
Now, Hisdar, he's supposed to be, I believe, a pretty young nobleman. He's more of an age with Dany than Dario is. Dario is written as being, in his 30s, a seasoned mercenary, the head of the Second Son's mercenary army. Mm-hmm. Whereas Hisdar is just, a rich guy, probably early 20s. So still icky, but less icky.
Less icky, yeah.
So I like the casting. I think that he has the right sort of look for a character like Hisdar. Mm-hmm. I think that he's a good enough actor to play opposite Emilia Clarke and probably give her something to work with, which maybe Ed Skrein didn't, and that may have been why he was replaced, is maybe he just didn't really give her enough to work with. Mm-hmm. I don't know, it's hard to say. But this guy, he seems like he could be good, and the way the story develops, he has a lot of room to act as well. Like, the character does a lot of stuff over the course of the next 2 or 3 seasons of the show, however long they're gonna drag this out, however long it takes Martin to write the next book.
Yeah, for real.
So I feel as though that particular casting it's good. It's at least as good as the casting of Bloodraven.
Really cool people die in this. I just realized how many people die in this next season. Really cool people die in this next season. Don't mind me.
Yeah, he's interneting.
I'm interneting at the moment.
I think that this character is more important than Bloodraven is for the season. He'll appear a lot quicker, because I'm pretty sure that Dany's just going to attack Marine in the first couple episodes, and he's just going to present himself to her pretty quickly on. She's going to lock up her dragons, and then Hisdar is just going to arrive and then start making his claims of peace or whatever. Mm-hmm. So I think that he's going to be appearing in most of the season, and that's good for him. Like, he had a failed sitcom last year, and
yeah.
So we have Mace Tyrell. He's going to be present for Tyrion's trial.
Yes.
And he's going to be at the wedding because he's the father of the bride. Mm-hmm. So he has to show up in the first episode or 2. Mm-hmm. And he's going to be in the show all the way through to the end, pretty much. So Roger Ashton Griffiths, who is a British character actor, he's never really starred in anything from what I can tell, but he was in movies like Gangs of New York. He was in the show The Tudors alongside Natalie Dormer, although he actually appears in The Tudors after Natalie Dormer's character dies.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. So he never actually got to work with her.
Yeah.
Which is a shame, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
But the casting of this actor as Mace Tyrell is interesting because it really focuses on one aspect of Mace Tyrell's character. Because Mace is a kind of a war leader. He's just not very good at it. Mm-hmm. He was the leader of the army that laid siege to Storm's End during Robert's Rebellion. He was loyal to the crown, and he is the catalyst for the entire story of Davos Seaworth having to get the onions into Storm's End, which is why he became a knight in the first place. Mm-hmm. So Mace Tyrell leading the army of the Reach against Storm's End is kind of the precursor of the entire Stannis storyline. Mm-hmm. But we're not really going to get a lot of that character out of this actor, I don't think. He is kind of like a bumbling old oaf, which is the other part of his character. And that's the part that Olenna really discusses with Sansa when they have their interactions in the garden, is she talks about her son as being, like a bumbling old oaf, a fat ass or whatever, and not really being good at anything.
Yeah.
So I think that we're going to really focus in on that part of the character.
Instead of the war leader
Instead of the war leader, which is interesting because in season 4 or 5, he's going to lay siege to Storm's End once more. Mm-hmm. Cersei is going to try and get rid of him because he's kind of hindering her political maneuvering. She's trying to get the best of Marjorie politically, and he's getting in her way, so she sends him off to Storm's End, saying, oh, well, you take out the rest of the Baratheons and you can have Storm's End if you want it.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that we have this part of the character, and we haven't even had the character before, even though he is the leader of the fleet that defends King's Landing during the Battle of the Bay. And at that point, he joins the Small Council as the Master of Ships.
Yeah.
So it's intriguing that this character exists in Book 2, but we're only seeing him, and we're seeing this particular part of him, and only in Season 4. Mm. So I find that very interesting that they're just basically cutting out the whole war leader part of his storyline. So I wonder whether or not they're going to send him to Storm's End at all, or if they're just going to send him back to Highgarden or something.
Try to do something just to get rid of him.
Yeah, just to get rid of him.
Because at that point in the story. Anyways.
So I like the casting of, Ashton Griffiths as Mace Tyrell. I think that's really interesting. He seems like a good actor. The character is going to be really interesting. The most important part of his character is that he is just bad at politics.
Yes.
He has all the money, and he doesn't know how to use it. He's the opposite of Tywin Lannister, pretty much.
Yeah.
He has the same amount of money, pretty much, but he has no idea what he's doing with it. And that's going to be a really interesting dichotomy, I think.
Yeah.
So we have two more casting to talk about, and they're related in some way, in a very important way. Mm-hmm. We have Oberyn Martell.
Yep.
Who is the Red Viper, and quite possibly my favorite character in the books for the 3 chapters he appears in.
Yeah, he's awesome.
And he's going to be played by Pedro Pascal. Pablo Pascal, sorry.
Pedro.
I had it written Pedro before, and then I looked it up. So it was stuck in my mind. Mm-hmm. He is one of the most important characters in the entire series, because he is the character that brings Dorne into the political structure of King's Landing. Mm-hmm. He is sent to King's Landing by Doran Martell, his brother.
Yes.
In order to claim a seat on the Small Council. Mm-hmm. Basically, he's the representative of the Deep South, the deserty, olive-growing, let's call it Greece or Spain of Westeros. Mm-hmm. In order to influence politics, in order to help Dorne and the South, who have been somewhat isolated because of the distance between them and the capital. Mm-hmm. Doran Martell is the Prince of Dorne. They've maintained sort of sovereignty, despite the fact that Dorne is among the 7 kingdoms. Mm-hmm. They are one of the 7 kingdoms over which the Iron Throne rules. But they maintain their own political structure. Mm-hmm. And the prince and princesses of Dorne have long been independent. Doran's youngest sister, Elia, was married to Rhaegar Targaryen, and her children were to be the heirs of the Iron Throne until Robert's Rebellion destroyed that power structure and inserted his own. Mm-hmm. Elia Sand was tragically killed during the sack of King's Landing.
Elia Martell.
Elia
Sand is someone else.
Elaria Sand is
someone else.
Elia Martell Targaryen was
Targaryen eventually.
was married to Rhaegar Targaryen, who was fighting on the Trident against Robert Baratheon.
Hammer to the chest.
Hammer to the chest, caves in the chest plate.
Yeah.
Rhaegar Targaryen dies. Elia Martell was in King's Landing tending to her 2 babies, Aegon, and I don't remember the girl's name. I know that they named the boy Aegon after their great-grandfather Egg.
Yeah, good old Egg.
I don't remember the girl's name. It doesn't matter. All 3 of them are killed by Gregor Clegane during the sack of King's Landing when the Lannisters arrive and turncoat against the Targaryens and join the rebellion. The bodies of Elia Martell and the 2 babies are presented to Tywin Lannister. So Doran never forgave the Lannisters. But for political reasons, he feels as though it is correct to attempt to create a political affiliation. I mean, you can't forgive or forget, but you can still seek, to improve your own standing despite the fact that you're working with former enemies. Oberyn doesn't quite have the same sensibility. He doesn't agree that you can just forget or forgive. He believes Doran grew soft. He believes as though his brother is disrespecting the Martells by seeking to work with the Lannisters, and Oberyn, unbeknownst to his brother, goes to King's Landing with only one mission in mind: vengeance. Red vengeance. Oberyn Martell is the Red Viper, and so he is being portrayed by Pablo Pascal? Okay, I was making sure I didn't get it wrong this time. Man, that's super racist of me.
Yeah. Speaking of racist, keep going. You did. My thought is in the last line of this, as well as yours.
Okay, well, let's take a look at where I was.
We have a picture of Pablo Pascal, and the number one thing is the man is white.
Well, he is white, yes. He's Latin. He is a South American actor. He is olive-skinned. He is somewhat swarthy. Well, he's not super swarthy, which maybe be the real issue, is that he isn't salty.
Yeah, he isn't salty.
He's not Mediterranean.
Yep.
But the real issue is that he's not Arabic for some reason. Everybody's really pissed off that he's not from Saudi Arabia, and he's not super dark-skinned and wearing a turban or something. I don't know where the internet gets this from. And I refer to the internet as a whole.
Yes.
All of the internet is wrong in this matter. They're just...
Someone is wrong on the internet.
When he was announced as the person portraying Oberyn Martell, immediately the internet blew up with, oh my god, he's white! And I don't understand where that comes from, because in the books he's described as being olive-skinned with brown eyes, brown hair. He is described as being Grecian or Spanish. Mm-hmm. Well, do you know where the Latin people came from? They came from fucking Spain! He's exactly what a Martell should look like, in my opinion. Maybe I'm the one who's crazy.
I don't know.
And the entire internet is correct, and I'm wrong, raging against the machine. But I am positive that this is not the tragedy that has befallen Game of Thrones.
No, I was commenting. Yes, I always thought them as darker, but
maybe they should be a little darker. We're gonna get to the last casting, and she's darker skinned.
Yeah.
Because she's of Indian descent.
Which is what I was thinking of the Dorns, was Indian. But
well, I always saw them as being maritime, being Mediterranean. I mean, maybe Egyptian, but even Egyptians aren't, traditionally considered to be as dark-skinned as more Central Africans. Mm-hmm. They're, because of all the interbreeding between the Romans and the Egyptians, I don't know. A lot of people think that he should be Middle Eastern. Or from the Indian subcontinent. Dark-skinned. I always saw the Martells as being Mediterranean, as being Spanish.
Okay.
Because Westeros is Europe.
Okay, yeah.
Essos is Asia.
Oh, okay. I can understand that.
And, I mean, that's always how I've seen the characters, is they're all archetypically European. And, I mean, you get a lot of intermixed coloring, so to speak, because there are, individuals of Middle Eastern descent in Europe, and there are Europeans in Asia. Like, it happens. And I've always seen, like, the free cities as being more Middle Eastern.
Okay.
Bravos, Pentos, Norvos, those areas as being like the Middle Eastern countries.
Okay.
The free cities being sort of like your Iran and Iraq, your Saudi Arabia, things like that. And I mean, when they cast Pentos, the first season, when they introduced Dany and Magister Illyrio, well, he's not Pentoshi. He's Westerosi, and was transplanted into Pentos in order to cover for Dany.
Yeah.
He's not Pentoshi. The Pentoshi are almost universally darker skinned as they travel west or east from Pentos towards the Dothraki Waste. All the people they interact with are fairly dark skinned. So that's just in my mind's eye as I was reading the books. And I found agreement in the TV show, for the most part, that Westeros is Europe and Essos is Asia.
Okay.
And
I guess I was sort of mixing. My mind, I was seeing, I don't know, I saw as Dorne and as more of being India in most cases, but I mean, that's reasonable because it's, dusty, sandy. There's a lot of, naked children playing in the water gardens, that sort of thing. But I just see it as being perhaps an extreme representation of, like, the sand belt in Spain. Maybe it isn't Greece, but the salty Dornishmen, like the sailors of Greece, really reminded me of, of Dorne, really reminded me of the Maritime Greeks. Maritime Greeks, okay.
Whereas I saw Old Town as being the Vatican.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, yeah, I can understand that more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and the center of education for European culture sort of idea.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I see the south of Westeros as being southern Europe, central Westeros being central Europe, your France and Germany, your, Liechtenstein, and then the north is, we're talking pretty much archetypical Scottish people. Basically, the north is Scotland.
Scotland, and the entirety of Scotland.
Like, there are some Irish people too, I guess.
Yeah, I was going to say,
but let's be honest, people. The Greyjoys are the Irish.
No, the Greyjoys, they're like Norsemen.
They are kind of like the Vikings.
Yes.
Yeah, fair.
Iron Price.
The Iron Price.
There's the reason why all the Norse died away, because they're like, agriculture? Fuck that shit, I'm just gonna steal it.
We do not sow, we just steal everything. Yeah. We have the final new cast member that we're gonna discuss here, who is Indira Varma, playing Alaria Sand. She is a bastard child of Dorne, but most importantly is she is the lover of Oberyn Martell. And I love this casting. Indira Varma is from Rome. She was in Bones, and she was in the second season of Human Target, which is where I'm most familiar with her. She played the boss of the company that was doing the whatever. But the most interesting part about this casting is how it juxtaposes against the casting of Pascal as Oberyn Martell. He's a nobleman of Dorne, and he is of Latin descent. She is a natural-born daughter of Dorne, and she's of Indian descent.
Which is
what you thought the Dornish would be.
Look at Arya Sand, there's Dorne. That's what I see Dorne as right there.
I mean, Indira Varma...
not Arya Sand, but Indira Varma. That's what I think of Dorne.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I still find the difference in cultural appearance between maybe how they cast a pure-blood Dornish nobleman and a less pureblood Dornish commoner. It is possible that they are looking for a distinction between those of noble birth and those of common birth. And maybe the more Asian look, the darker skinned look, that comes from being of common birth, maybe mixed heritage with Essos blood or something like that, whereas the commoner or the nobles are more pure-blooded or something like that. It's hard to say. I just find it very strange that all of this rage happened on the internet, that Pascal wasn't dark enough, and then they cast his girlfriend, and she's everything the internet wishes he was.
Yeah.
Alright, so we've discussed the casting. Do you have anything to say about Indira Varma other than the fact that she's what you think Pedro Pascal should look like? Or Pablo Pascal should look like? Oh my god, I keep calling him Pedro.
Pablo. Yeah, like I said, that's how I see Dorn, but... No, I have no, you've seen her on Human Target, I haven't seen her act before, so I'm not sure how good she'd be.
I think she's fine. She's a talented actress.
Yeah, should be fun.
It should be interesting.
Alright, we good?
I think we're good on casting. I mean, there have been other castings announced. I mean, there's 1 billion characters in Season 4, and half of them are new because they killed off half the characters last year.
Yep.
So, I think that we're going to move on now. Game of Thrones bad lip reading.
Okay.
Have you seen this yet?
I have not seen this yet.
Oh, it's amazing. I watched it once this afternoon just to make sure that the links worked.
Yeah. Which one do you want?
Click on the first one. It's the extended trailer for a new movie coming out this winter. And we're going to record us watching the trailer live, and then we're going to discuss it a little bit. Mm-hmm. But, okay, so, do you have your volume on? Bad Lip Reading presents Medieval Land Funtime World.
What?
You think they should make iPhones for babies? Because I do. Now, see, that's a movie that I would pay money to go see.
Okay. I just got a bit on the inside.
So that is the viral video that's taken over the internet the past week or so. Oh, fuck. There we go.
Yeah.
So, what did we think of that?
That was pretty hilarious. Oh my god.
Are you a fan of the Pikachu?
Yeah, are you a fan of the Pikachu? I can just watch endless episodes, and just streaming of Tyrion slapping Joffrey.
Oh, there's actually a 10-hour one.
10-hour loop.
It's just...
And it's in everywheres. Oh my god. I just hate a cheesesteak. Oh my god.
Do you think they should make iPhones for babies? Because I do.
Oh my god. That's fantastic.
What did everybody think of the kitten meat? The what? The kitten meat that I just put in everybody's burgers that we ate just now.
It's only baby kittens.
Only baby kittens. Jeez.
That just happened.
Oh man. That was awesome. I really wanted you to see that. I didn't think that you had seen it yet.
No, I hadn't.
So I wanted to be here when you saw it. I thought that was awesome. And they did a cut with extended scenes of some of those scenes. Mm-hmm. It's not a longer trailer. It's actually probably about half as long as that video. So both of those links are going to go in the show notes, and I'll probably just end up putting the video on the blog, just putting it in there, just linking to the YouTube video. I think it's pretty much the greatest bad lip reading I've seen. In my thoughts on Thrones this week, I discussed how I really liked the casting of almost all the characters. Mm-hmm. I think I would have liked to have somebody maybe with a deeper voice for Bobby B, so to speak. Mm-hmm. I felt as though maybe that one was a little bit whinier than it should have been.
Yeah.
But all the rest of them seemed just pitch perfect to me.
Yeah.
Especially Tyrion the drug dealer.
Tyrion the
Come
drug
on,
dealer.
that was fantastic.
That was amazing. Yeah, Tyrion the drug dealer.
Are you a fan of the Pikachu?
Are you a fan of the Pikachu?
I think that I'm going to end up quoting that quite a bit. When we do our next game video and we end up playing Martells versus Lannister, or Greyjoys versus Lannisters a lot, I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of quotes of Jaime and Tyrion from that video.
Yeah.
It's so good. So I felt as though that was newsworthy. at least as important and entertaining as the casting news
Yes.
from the summer. So our third point on our show notes is George R.R. Martin speaks out. He was at a convention, I think it was a couple weeks ago, and he discussed his feelings on the show, how it differs from the books, and then inevitably his anxiety towards the show meeting up with and then passing the books. Mm-hmm. So there's a link in your show notes, and I'm going to put that up on the site for everybody as well. Okay, you've got it pulled up. Mm-hmm. So most importantly, I wanted to talk about the butterfly effect, which is the points 2 and 3 that he discusses there. Mm-hmm. The choices that the producers have made right from the very first season all the way through are monumentally important because they've written characters out of the show and they have interfered with the progression of characters. Shut up, cat! The progression of characters that are going to be important later on. So, in season 3, Tywin Lannister is talking to Olenna Tyrell. Mm-hmm. And he tells her that if she doesn't do what he wants, he's going to name Loras to the Kingsguard. Mm-hmm. And his threat to her is that if Loras is on the Kingsguard, he can never have children and never claim any land, which will cause the Tyrell name to fade away. Mm-hmm. The only thing that can mean is that Loras is the only heir to Highgarden.
Yes.
In the books, Loras is not the heir to Highgarden. Loras is the third son of Mace Tyrell. Yep. He has 2 older sons, Willis and Garland. Willis being the heir to Highgarden, who Sansa is actually supposed to marry, not Loras, in the books. And then Garland Tyrell, who is awarded the lands of House Florent when they side with Stannis during the War of Five Kings. Mm-hmm. The Iron Throne strips House Florent of all their lands and gives them to House Tyrell.
Yep.
But Loras is not the heir. He's the youngest son. Mm-hmm. He doesn't matter. If he weren't a part of a proud family or a knight of his caliber, he would probably be joining the Night's Watch, because that's what the youngest son of a lord does, he is that house's donation to the Night's Watch to help keep things going up north to protect the realm. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't happen because he's one of the greatest knights of the realm. He's super gay for Renly. Mm. And so when Mace Tyrell makes his alliance with Renly at the start of the War of Five Kings, he brings Loras to the south with Marjorie in order to basically bind them to Renly together. Rather than having any of the other stuff that Loras should be doing as a youngest son happen. Mm-hmm. In the show, it makes sense that he would go to Renly, because as heir to Highgarden, he brings all of the influence of the Reach with him. Mm-hmm. In the books, he just likes the butt. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know what I feel about them basically writing Willis and Garland out of the show. Willis and Garland are already kind of important because they represent the future of the Reach, mm-hmm. and they bring Highgarden the possibility of still existing as the home of House Tyrell at the end of the war. Mm-hmm. But in this case, that's impossible. Because if Loras is a member of the Kingsguard, mm-hmm. then Highgarden doesn't exist anymore as the home of House Tyrell, because House Tyrell stops existing. Mace might arrive in King's Landing with a pregnant wife.
Yes, and there's going to be lots of little baby
And there could be just a little baby forthcoming that will take the place of Willis later on in the series. Mm-hmm. Because Willis doesn't need to be a character, he just needs to exist to take Highgarden when Mace Tyrell eventually dies.
Yes.
There just needs to be a male that can take the title Lord of Highgarden from Mace Tyrell mm-hmm. eventually. Mm-hmm. It's also possible that Mace Tyrell could award the lands of the Reach and Highgarden to his bannerman and loyal retainer, Randall Tarley. Mm-hmm. And maybe the Tyrells won't exist, but the Tarleys can Maybe the Tarleys can take that place in the Reach.
Yeah.
And maybe Marjorie inevitably stops being Queen of Westeros and can marry some unnamed son of Randall Tarleys and then join those two houses in the Reach. Mm-hmm. Because theoretically, Tommen Baratheon is not going to be king forever.
No.
Marjorie Tyrell is not going to be his queen forever because she's a Black Widow. Everyone she marries dies.
Yes.
And I think that there's a good chance that maybe she ends up being Cersei. Inevitably. Just being the lady of the house wherever she ends up being. And she's just, the Black Widow, which Cersei wants to be, but she's not very good at it. Mm-hmm. So, the creative decision that Benioff and Weiss made at the very start of the series not to include those two Tyrell children is very intriguing because it changes the history of the continent.
Yeah.
Changes what houses are going to exist at the end of the series as it differs from the books.
Yeah.
I think that choice that they made is very important and interesting. Mm-hmm. It is less important and interesting than the other one that they made. In season 1...
Oh, yes. Yeah, I just saw the bullet point.
In season 1, there is a singer who performs for King Joffrey a very ribald and somewhat offensive song about Joffrey's mother. Joffrey shows mercy and has this man's tongue cut out.
As opposed to just straight up death.
As opposed to murder, as opposed to death, hanging, or whatever. His name is Marilyn. If Marilyn can't speak, he can no longer be a singer, and so he would not be in the Eyrie performing for Robert Arryn. Mm-hmm. It's possible that they'll just say it's just somebody. There's just some random singer, maybe even. Some minstrel happens to be at the Eyrie, happens to be present. So, Martin, in this interview that he had, or panel discussion, I guess, he mentions that he, over the last year or so, has been feeling an extreme amount of anxiety. So, Martin states that he is feeling about this TV show and how quickly it's coming upon where he is in writing the books to being bound to train tracks and seeing the smoke coming towards him from the distance. Mm-hmm. He can't see the train yet, but he knows it's coming. It's interesting that he doesn't feel motivated to write more quickly. He doesn't feel inspired by the choices that Benioff and Weiss have made. He feels anxious about the fact that he doesn't believe he's necessarily going to get these done in time. Have we put our faith in the wrong individual?
Maybe.
His publishing company is coming out with a book this year, I believe, of quotes of Tyrion Lannister. The wisdom of Tyrion Lannister. Mm-hmm. And so Martin, on the internets, stupid internets, has been getting endless hell for this. Because they feel as though he is being distracted from writing The Winds of Winter with all these other side projects. Mm-hmm. Because in there's a fantasy anthology coming in December where he wrote a book about the Civil War, and the dangerous women, the Targaryen women that were associated with the Targaryen Civil War, which I believe is the Blackfire Rebellion. Mm-hmm. He's been distracted by writing a short story. He's been distracted by editing and producing a book of quotes. He's been distracted by writing and directing episodes of the Game of Thrones TV show. Mm-hmm. He is being distracted by, I'm sure, eating powdered sugar donuts. Mm-hmm. He's been distracted by probably a lot of heart conditions at this point. Let's be honest, the man doesn't look to be in the best health.
Nope.
Will Brandon Sanderson be writing book 7 of the Game of Thrones?
If he will, that would have been amazing.
Mr. Sanderson, this is a call out. Please contact George Martin at your earliest convenience in order to acquire the manuscripts needed to begin the process. We need these books written in time for the show to be produced.
And that being said, Brandon Sanderson can write a pile and quickly, because he wrote three books.
3 books of Wheel of Time in the time it took for Jordan to write Knife of Dreams.
That's a lot. What did you say? He wrote 500,000 words? Or something like that?
I mean, he had a good starting place. Jordan left him a lot of notes.
Yeah, he had a lot of notes. And, of course, Jordan's wife...
Marcella Lannister,
go. Robert Jordan's wife, I can't remember, wife, I can't remember her name. She was the main editor. She's the first draftsman, main editor of the entire thing. And he basically wrote it under her watchful eye.
Right, yeah.
So you have the woman who edited all the previous books and read them and has had so much invested in the story, as you do, or as the writer did, not as Brandon Sanderson did, over your shoulder, being like, "Yes, this is correct. This is how the character would respond to the situation.
Right,
yes, you're right there." So he had a fantastic way. That being said, Brandon Sanderson has written some of the most interesting books yet.
The final note that I wanted to bring up from that panel conversation Martin had was that he discussed the POV characters that he chose when he started the series. Most importantly, Robb was never a POV character throughout his entire existence in the books.
Which we always considered it as him being marked for death.
Well, that's the thing, is it was kind of a spoiler because he didn't get to fully integrate with the story in a lot of ways. So, inevitably, he was going to stop being in the books. I mean, there are a lot of POV characters that have died. Catelyn, for one. So he says here specifically in this panel discussion that if he could go back and rewrite, he would make Robb a POV character. At least throughout one of the first 2 books. Just to give us more of a complete experience from his perspective. Because we don't ever really know how he thought. We know the things he said and the way he responded visually and verbally to the things going on around him, but we never got to hear his inner narration.
Yeah, and especially you're going to talk about a character that, even at a young age, had amazing tactical thinking.
Oh, absolutely.
Like he was completely undefeated on the battlefield.
There was a quote from Tyrion Lannister that in 1 year's time, Robb Stark had more victories on the battlefield than Mace Tyrell did in 20.
Yes.
And Mace Tyrell was master of the fleet. He was the leader of the army at the siege of Storm's End. He was one of the principal bannermen of the Targaryens, and then eventually the Lannisters, throughout the 2 major wars that this book series covers.
So, pretty much, the way he's portrayed in the series through all these other characters is he is the greatest general this world has ever seen.
He's Napoleon.
Right off the bat, you never get inside his mind.
Which is a shame, and I personally would have liked to hear even just his inner monologue. Because you hear a lot of his tactical thinking out loud as he's discussing with the Great John, with Roose Bolton, even with his mother, the strategies that he's going to undertake. But I would like to hear what he truly thought about these men that he was working alongside and the people that he was fighting against, the Lannisters. Because we never really understand how he feels about his father's murder.
Yes. You know it causes
because
him.
he closes himself off.
The only point where he really opens up to anyone is to
Jane.
Jane, and that's only after they think that Bran and Rickon are dead. So that's not even. That's only his only real response of him being overly emotional is when his brothers are killed.
When brothers are killed. That's right.
Not when his father's dead. is he takes his father's death really, really well.
Well, no, he starts a war.
Yeah, really, really well.
It escalates pretty quickly.
But his actual complete psychic break is
when his brothers
die. When his brothers are killed.
Okay, so we have covered all the points that I wanted to cover. Was there anything that you wanted to discuss? I mean, about the show, about the book series, about... Alright, well, that'll do it for this week's episode of The Cast in the Darkness. Until next time, keep your stick on the ice.
Do we have time for wild speculation?
Sure, let's have a new segment on the podcast, Wild Speculation with Matt and Clay.
Yes. Or do we want to save that for another one?
Oh, it's fine. If it's no good, I'll cut it and save it for another one. So what would you like to speculate wildly about?
Mm-hmm. So are you going to include the bit where we're talking about we think Sansa's character is going to be really important, who takes the throne?
I think I'm going to keep that in, yeah.
You're going to keep that bit in?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so, wild speculation. Who marries Sansa? And how powerful is she at the end?
Who marries Sansa? And how powerful is she at the end? I think she's Queen of Westeros at the end.
I think she's Queen of Westeros at the end, yes.
And I think that she marries Aegon Targaryen.
Yes, okay. So I actually didn't know who was she going to marry, but I was 100% sure she's Queen of Westeros. She is, in the actual historical War of the Roses, she is the York daughter that gets married to, I can't remember who, but they make the House of the Tudors.
Yes.
Which is the royalty they continue. The royal family. It comes from those two. That's who I think Sansa Stark is.
I would say that she marries a Martell, but I don't think there are any Martells left for her to marry.
Yes, at that point, no, there wouldn't be.
I don't think there are any more Martell men for her to marry. Which makes me think she must marry Aegon.
Yeah, she must marry Aegon and then
because he's the only principal male that can influence politics enough to take the throne.
Mm-hmm.
And he is slowly working his way up the coast to King's Landing. And while she's currently on her way towards Winterfell, I think that Peter Baelish is going to get some murder.
Peter Baelish is going to get some murder?
Yeah. I think that Sandor Clegane is going to come back, and I think that he's going to rescue Sansa from Peter Baelish. Because Arya left him dying of a fever, but that doesn't mean he dies of a fever.
No, doesn't mean he dies.
I think that the Hound comes back and rescues his... I think he calls her his flower, or his little bird or something.
Little bird. Comes back and rescues his little bird.
And I think that he takes her back to King's Landing, following some, I don't know, real dramatic something. Maybe Cersei is found guilty and she's hung or beheaded, and Tommen loses the throne because it's found that he is not an heir to the throne.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that he brings her back in response to this power vacuum.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe they arrive around the same time as Aegon Targaryen and Griff.
Okay.
And maybe they meet and they have a meet cute, fall in love, and take over the throne. That's where I think that part of the story goes. And I think Dany never leaves Meereen.
I think Dany comes back.
You think Dany comes back?
I think Dany comes back.
And marries Sansa. And they have the cutest lesbian love ever.
Nope. As much as that would be hilarious.
It would be fantastic.
It would be fantastic.
Imagine that scene in the show.
Yeah, boom pitch. I think Dany comes back and she stays in the north with Jon.
Okay, I could see her coming back, and I mean, I could see her coming back as a banner woman to Aegon, and then the three heads of the dragon basically taking Westeros for Aegon, for young Griff.
For young Griff, yep.
Taking Westeros with the dragons, her and Jon and Tyrion, taking Westeros basically by shock, and crushing resistance, and then maybe she goes to the north and takes Winterfell with Jon, who stops being Lord Commander of the Night's Watch?
No, I think he stays being Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, and she stays on the wall, defending the kingdom.
Stays on the wall, and then Stannis takes Winterfell?
I don't know. I don't know who takes Winterfell, but I think he stays as Lord Commander of the Night's Watch.
Do you?
I think so. I could be wrong there.
Maybe the Night's Watch gets disbanded, though. Maybe they defeat the others,
Yeah.
the wildlings join them, and then there's no need for a Night's Watch.
Well, actually, I think what happens is the wildlings come down into the gift. Beneath it. They populate
They
that.
populate the gift. And then they take on the role of protecting the North.
Protecting the North. And maybe Jon stays there as sort of their leader. Or
leader of the wildlings?
Leader of the wildlings. Or he moves south to Winterfell.
Do you really think Dany could survive on the wall? She was in the desert for years.
It's going to be as bad as Catelyn Stark was at the wall, because she hated being cold.
That's true, eh?
Which is the exact opposite to Ned, who opened the doors to their bedroom,
right.
and she's just like, I fucking hate you.
Yeah, it's
He's
true.
standing there naked in the winter wind, in the middle of the night with the windows open, and it's just like, you are the hardest man in the world, Ned Stark.
Yeah, it's true, eh?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I could totally see Dany coming back and doing those things. I have a hard time seeing her being able to come back and being satisfied with not being queen. But if Aegon Targaryen is who they say he is, and he may not be, then he is legitimately the heir to Aerys' throne. Because he would be Rhaegar's son. His only son of pure birth. Because Jon is his son, but Jon is his natural-born son.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a theory that Jon Snow is the son of Rhaegar and Lyanna.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that's how Jon Snow is a Targaryen, why he can ride a dragon.
Yeah.
That's the theory is if he is the head of a dragon, then that is how he is the head of the dragon, is that he's Rhaegar Targaryen's bastard son.
Bastard son, not
Ned Stark's.
Ned Stark's, yeah.
Which is
interesting and not interesting.
Well, the issue is the show hasn't even discussed the Tower of Joy yet.
Oh, yeah.
They haven't, or Howland Reed. None of that story has been touched.
Yeah.
Which is
an issue if Jon is Rhaegar and Lyanna.
Jon Rhaegar and Lyanna's son is Ned Stark found Jon Snow at the Tower of Joy, where he was born of Lyanna Stark, being protected by a couple bannermen of Rhaegar Targaryen, and the ensuing battle left a lot of people dead, including Lyanna, who required of Ned to never tell anyone that Jon is Rhaegar's son, because the entire purpose of the rebellion was to get Lyanna back from Rhaegar, whom they had fallen in love with one another, Lyanna and Rhaegar, except that Lyanna was betrothed to Robert Baratheon. Rhaegar stole Lyanna from Robert Baratheon in order to be beloved by her, because him and Elia, they weren't in love, it was just an arranged marriage by Aerys and Doran. There was no love there. But he truly loved Lyanna Stark, so he kidnapped her away from Robert Baratheon, and that sparked the rebellion. Robert was like, well, nobody take my woman.
No one take my bitch.
She was Helen of Troy.
Oh, nice.
I mean, that's pretty much exactly who she is the Trojan prince. The Trojan prince steals Helen away from the Greeks, and the Greeks start a giant war. And eventually they sack Troy.
Yeah.
Well, they sack King's Landing, and then they just install themselves on the throne. So that makes sense that Rhaegar wouldn't just kidnap some random noblewoman for no reason. And she wouldn't just be at the Tower of Joy dying for no reason.
And she died in childbirth.
Right. Yeah, she was dying as she was giving birth to Jon Snow. Yeah. Who should be John Rivers.
Who should be John Rivers, not John Cena.
Right. So I do believe that at the end of the series, Sansa and Aegon will be on the throne.
Mm-hmm.
And that I think, I mean, you're right. Dany has to come back because they have to put the dragons into the story somehow.
Yeah, the dragons got to get back over to this side of the story.
So she has to leave Essos. I mean, she's so pointless right now.
Yeah, her character's there's nothing going on.
So
Especially
bad.
she's already backed all the way back to the Dothraki
She's in the Dothraki Waste. Yeah.
Again. She's going backwards.
She's, I don't know.
Raging. Half dead with a sick dragon.
Yeah. I don't know, but it's fine. And, like, her worst enemy just found her.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's fine, but I don't like her story right now. I loved her story right up until Dance with Dragons.
Yeah, I liked her story right up to that. I hated her story. I hated Book 5. I did not like it at all.
Book 5, I liked Tyrion's story.
Oh, Tyrion's story was cool.
I liked Jon's story, the glamour.
Oh, yeah.
There was a pretty good, like, the North story, like the White Harbor stuff was interesting. It wasn't great.
Yeah.
The Reek stuff I didn't love.
No, I didn't like the Reek stuff.
The Arya stuff was amazing, though.
Oh, yeah, true that. I did like Arya's.
The House of Black and White.
House of Black and White,
Yeah.
She goes kill someone.
We'll probably be discussing that stuff in greater detail later on in the podcast.
Mm-hmm. Maybe when it comes up on the TV show.
Oh, that's going to be a few years.
Yeah, I suppose it would be. Yeah, because Arya's never mind. Yeah.
Because Arya hasn't even gotten to Bravos yet.
Yeah, true that.
Like, she's not even Cato Canals yet.
Yeah, that's right. You got all the Cato Canal stuff going on.
Yeah.
Forgot about that.
Like, she still has to get on a ship and cross the Narrow Sea.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, so that was a pretty good podcast.
That was a lot covered.
I would say that was the longest podcast I've ever recorded.
Mm-hmm.
I would say we are probably at the 3.5 hour mark. No, only 2 hours 48 minutes. That's not so bad.
2 hours 48 minutes? No, that's not so bad. Considering it's been recording the entire time, we were
chatting. We have silence a bunch of places. I think I can get it down to under 2 hours.
For sure.
Yeah.
What, 2 hours 45?
2 hours 48.
48?
Is where we're at right now.
Yeah. I'm probably can almost cut an hour out of it. There's a lot of dead space, a lot of us talking about Star Trek and...
Star Trek. That might end up getting on the floor, yeah.
Yeah, that's probably going to get cut out.
Alright, well, that'll do it for this week's episode of The Cast in the Darkness. Until next time, keep your stick on the ice.